first music. Perfect. Thank you so much. So I know that people are still coming in, but I'm just gonna go give you guys a brief introduction of what IxDA is in case this is your first time. So welcome everyone once again to IxDA Vancouver's event. So IxDA is a global nonprofit organization with a lot of different branches around the world. Vancouver is just one of the branch. It started at 2008, run by a team of 2 volunteers. Now we are what you see. We have really excited. We have about 1,500 people across all social media. We have Meetup group. We have Facebook, LinkedIn, and also Eventbrite as well. So the idea of the event is that we want to educate all the UX practitioners, also non-designers. We have shared topics over the years about user experience, interaction, service design, design thinking, innovation, all of the good stuff you can think of. It all related back to tonight's event. So tonight, the Fireside Chat event, we are super delighted. We got to invite Yumi. She is a UX manager at Shopify, one of the global leaders at the e-commerce industry. She will be sharing with us some top attributes you can stay competitive and keep up with the design industry trend. In case you don't know what that means, she is really kind. She will be providing us some good concrete framework to build up that good habit. If you ever feel stuck on what you are doing, not getting the promotion and getting the job you want, you will love it tonight. So I'm going to turn down the music just a touch. And hi, Yumi.
Hey, thanks.
Hi.
Hello, nice to meet you, everyone.
Great. So Yumi, I've spoken too much. Why don't I just give you the stage and can you please sort of briefly introduce yourself, who you are and what are you working in Shopify?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I mean, first of all, thanks for joining us today. I'm very grateful to be here to share my experience, and I really hope you'll leave today's chat with something to be excited about your career, especially in the design industry. It's not that bad, you know? So I'll do a short intro of myself. So I started my design career as a UX designer in 2012 and worked for many companies. And in the last 4 years of my career is really when I focused on leading design teams in different shapes and sizes, really focused on like influencing purpose, process, and also people to help teams just to be better. So Shopify. So I'm very new to Shopify, so I just want to put that out there as a disclaimer. I've only been here for just a month and a day. But I will share as much as I can with you guys. There has been lots to take in, and I do think that I do have something to share if you guys have any questions. But yeah, I am currently at Shopify as a UX manager for our inventory team. So I am managing about 5 designers, including 2 interns. And today is actually a special day because I got all of them transferred to me, so I'm officially their manager. But yeah, like day to day, what I do is like I mentioned, like I really focus on helping these designers work, you know, horizontally with their like trifectas, like PMs, engineers, and also data scientists. And I also, you know, make sure that we are aligned on strategy so that I work with my trifectas, so like PM leads and engineering managers. And then I also, you know, work with our upper managers, like senior UX managers, and also our like upper product leads to make sure that the product strategy is cascaded down properly all the way across the organization. Yeah, that's a lot.
But yeah, I know that before the event we're still talking about how big Shopify is, and I know that your department is focusing on something different, and maybe you can give us a bit more context on what your department is doing.
Yeah, so I guess my department as in like UX. So
Yes.
yeah. So we're not really doing anything different than anywhere else. But at Shopify, UX, user experience properly, is a core of our business success, and it is very strongly believed by everyone in the organization. And I think as a result, a lot of what we do is very actively and proactively supported, which is great. So you do feel very empowered as a designer to do your best and just focus on what is best for our merchants, which are our targeted users.
Right. The reason why I ask this is because I know you are very experienced. You work for many companies before. I've stayed in Vancouver for many years.
Okay.
And I know that you are starting off as a self-taught designer in product design. And I'm very curious on that one. How did you came from just graduated from your university and start off your career in the product design?
Yes, it's I've done this before, so I can do this again. So yeah, I think when I was when I was so when I went to University of British Columbia, UBC in Vancouver, Canada. My first year was, of course, something along the lines of science. So as long as my grades allowed it. So I went to computer science. Didn't know what that was. Not really. And my first year, I realized it was just really, I didn't jive well with it. I just couldn't get that concept around my head. So I said, okay, let's try something else. So I started taking lots of different electives, and that's when I really came across with like arts. And I also, like, even outside of school, I think I was dabbling with graphic design at the time. Back then, like, blogs were really big. So there were lots of, notable graphic designers or illustrators who had blogs. So I followed and subscribed to a lot of them, and I think I was really inspired to do something related to graphic design. However, unfortunately, UBC at the time didn't have any graphic design or illustration related courses. So I was like, oh, well, I can't really stop. I should at least have my degree, me being Asian. So I transferred to the Bachelor of Fine Arts, and I got into this special course where it allowed me to find any medium or use any medium that I want and spend the last 2 years of my university years just to, create art with it. So it really gave me good time to actually like explore graphic design. But that wasn't really enough. So I took a course. It was an online course at BCIT called Web Technology. It allowed me to, it basically taught me how to build websites from scratch. So it wasn't just about like web design, but it was also about like developing a website. And I started like volunteering, and naturally, like I just got into this like, tech world, and also web design. And that's when I started started to build my own portfolio, try different web builders that was available to me at the time. And I started networking a lot. I think I volunteered for many different clubs at UBC, as a web designer or web developer. They called it. And then I was really lucky to land on a job right away after my graduation. And I just like wore many, many different hats, just did everything related to design, basically. And from there on, I moved job a lot. I just went after things that I didn't know, but I was curious about. So I started to really dig in. Like I started from web design, and then I was like, oh, UI UX sounds really cool. And UI UX specifically for like SaaS company or SaaS product. And then I was like, at some point, oh, hey, like I am doing a lot of these UI UX, but why is this so important? So I got a job at Wider Funnel, which is the conversion optimization agency, where I learned a lot about the business side of things that design plays a huge part in. Yeah, so from there on, basically, I landed, I think UI UX term sort of naturally evolved into product design. And yeah, so yeah, go ahead.
Yumi, this is fantastic because your background is actually so different and in some way similar to some of our audiences here coming from different background, and they just try to work their way into doing what they love. Speaking about, because you came a long way and now to UX, is there any secret or sort of, our topics tonight is top 3 attributes, right? So can you maybe share with us some of your experience along the way? How did you slowly fine-tuning your career path?
Yeah, I think when I started, you know, it was all about just learning what it is to be in design industry. I didn't know, you know, like anyone who's starting something new, I didn't know what it was really going to be like. I didn't really think that, or I didn't even know what was UX manager or design manager was at the time. It wasn't really in my book. But I think naturally, I think it's also what I guess what you feel the most rewarding, like how I guess what you feel the most rewards from is like how I got into management. So I think people can go into different tracks, right? So one is craft. So you can go into craft leadership. And I went into the people management because, like you were mentioning, like I didn't really, you know, go through that smooth and easy path into design. I sort of had to make my own way into, you know, creating that path for me. And I did lack, I wish I had mentors or mentorship from those who had experience before me. And I do think that that would have made my life a little easier. I mean, I can only, I can only assume that it would have, but I do strongly believe that it would have made my life much easier. Maybe help me, you know, get to where I am much faster. Yeah. So where was I?
You were talking about it's definitely hard to proceed in your to excel in your career without a mentor.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's why I focused a lot on helping others and just nurturing other designers who may benefit from my experience. And I think that just sort of naturally helped me, you know, go to the path to design management, the design leadership in that way. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Here's the time. My first question. So of course I know what we are going to talk about. So I'm going to ask you during our private conversation, you mentioned something about high agency mindset is really important. And I'm sure not everyone knows because not everyone has worked at the agency before. So what do you mean exactly, high agency mindset?
Right. So yeah, high agency. I don't mean like it's like an agency in terms of like design agency, like where you work for different clients. It's not what I mean. High agency means like it is basically a sense that you decide what you can or cannot do, and also that you have control over it. So a high agency person often looks to bend reality to their will. They will either find a way or or they make a way if there is.
High agency mindset, according to you just now, it doesn't have to work from the agency before. I'm getting curious, at what point in your career timeline you realized such mindset is very important?
I think I think it's important to talk about when I realized or noticed, this something like high agency exists or it is important. I think it was, so let me use a real life example. So I used to be a horrible speaker. It's not that I am a better speaker now, but I used to be a really bad speaker. So it became a critical blocker as I made transition to management. And
Okay.
speaking was integral to clear communication and also effective management in general. So I had to do something about it. So basically my thoughts were like, how do I learn how to speak better? What does that even mean? And it just lingered in my mind for some time. And I think this is when I realized the term like high agency. Like I started to like really dig into blogs and books, and just like really tease out, what I can do about it, like which was like writing out script. So let's, write it out before I speak.
Wow.
So, but the funny thing is like as I started writing it out, writing out what I would talk about before meetings, I realized I'm not good at writing.
Mm,
And, as I started writing more, I realized that I am not good at critical thinking, which is a key to good writing. So now it really sounds like I'm just lack of important skills, and it was probably true. So in the end, like I worked on critical skill, then writing, then finally speaking. I think the initial discovery of lacking speaking skill became a series of basically like quite depressing self-discovery. But I
mm,
think this is where the high agency comes in. The process didn't really let me down. And I would be honest that my partner would say otherwise. It was a pretty stressful time. But the point is that I didn't give up until I saw improvements. And I think the high agency, the term was really, I mean, it was coined way before, but it was coined and realized like, or sort of given to me by my previous mentor, Mano, who was my um, direct manager at the Pure Curify. And I think he really like defined that strength in me, that I do have high agency and high agency is my strength. I think that's when I realized, oh yeah, right, like that. Okay, that's what I can explain myself to be, good at. So yeah, like I think that's sort of the high agency and how it can manifest itself in real scenario.
mm.
Um, yeah.
Would it be fair if I say high agency mindset is a spirit to keep looking, realizing your what your weaknesses are and try to find way to improve it along the way?
I would say I think it's not really a simple term for sure, right? I think it's many things in combination.
Mm,
But I think high agency really comes down to, or it just really makes difference when you're a bit lost, right? So imagine that you don't know how to do something. You don't know what is that first step.
mm,
I think, yeah, like if you have the agency, then you're going to say, hey, if there is no obvious step in front of me, I'm going to make one, right?
right.
So I think it is that sort of, yeah, it is that mindset, I think.
Especially, I think when 10 years ago, the user experience wasn't really a terminology anyways. How,
Yeah.
what do you think people, since you mentor a lot of designers right now, do you think designers nowadays are missing the high agency mindset?
Mm, I don't think I can really answer that with high confidence. But I think one thing I can say is I think for many entry level designers, I think the importance of high agency uh, isn't necessarily in their awareness yet, which is totally fair. I don't think I even understood what high agency was, right? Um, I think some of us, like some of you may just naturally have it. it's just your personality. You're just a go-getter. But some of us are not. But I think when you have the awareness of something, I think that's when you have that almost like a fast start, right? To get to a point. So yeah, I think that's why, like, if there are entry-level designers today, I think this might be a really good opportunity to, even just take away, what is high agency, and just, keep thinking about it over the period of time of your career.
If that's the case, how do we as a designer can manifest or have a build up a framework to help ourselves to acquire the mindset, because we don't know what we don't know, right? We can't certainly just go down 10 years in the row and all of a sudden realize it. I guess that's the beauty of the event tonight. It's that we see what tips can we get from you. How do we get the mindset? Where do we get it?
Yeah, it's it's not simple, but it's also not complicated if you think about it, right? So I think the first thing that's important is the mindset change that we talked about, that you are the owner of your own life and you make things happen. And I think it's easier said than done, but I think it's something that you just need to keep in mind when things are not going in the expected ways. And you just basically don't wait for others to solve those problems for you. And you also, you believe that you can make a change, even if it only brings 1% difference. And I think this is also something to put our finger on. I do think that a lot of us, I think, regardless of our experience level, we do have high expectation of ourselves. And because we have high expectation, we try hard. And when you try hard, naturally, you expect more, right? You think you deserve more. And I am a victim of that too. But I think that's like one thing that I recently realized that I should stop doing. I think you should really be able to, celebrate and also recognize that small difference. And I think that is key to stay motivated and stay in that high agency mode. Yeah, did that make sense?
That makes sense. I just picked up the word recognizing the small differences. What can you elaborate a little bit more to that?
Yeah, no, that's great, because I was just going to go into the next one, which is important, which is always, I learned that it's always better to start with a small problem. I used to often start with big problem because it just makes that problem seem a lot more worthy. But yeah, you may begin with a big ambitious problem, right? But I think the key here is that you have to learn to break them down to smaller problems and choose one that is the hardest for you to solve. And you just have to continue that process infinitely. But by breaking these problems smaller, you are able to solve a problem much quicker. And also the result of solving that problem will become a bit more concrete.
Right.
Yeah, so I can give you an example. I know it's...
Please, I love examples, yes.
So, and this is something that I went through also while I was interviewing. When you realize that you need to start looking for a job, right? That is a big problem. Oh, I need to look for a job. That is a problem to solve, right?
Yeah.
But that is ambiguous. What do you mean by looking for a job? What kind of job do you want, right? Where do you want to apply? Then, you go into, okay, if I want to apply here, will I be qualified, right? You start asking these questions.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good process of breaking down problem. And as an example, I went down to path of just listing out things that are really important to me, right? What I'm looking for in my next job, and started look at all these new job openings that would fit into, or that would mark my checklist.
Mm.
So there I solved my problem, one problem, right?
Yeah.
Which means I know where to apply to.
Ah.
So, just treat that sort of like a bite-sized problem. Not treat, sorry, just solve one at a time, one small problem at a time.
Mm.
And because, when you sort of start with a blank page, you have that blank page, syndrome. Like you just sit there, procrastinate until you get stressed, right? But I
Yes.
think if you learn to break down a problem and you have something easy to solve, or it is quick to solve, then you're more motivated, you're more encouraged to go at it, right? So I
Oh,
think that is the key. Yeah.
finding a small win for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And that will help you build a habit of, having that agency and continuing with that agency, right? Because I think being a high agency person, or having not having, sorry, this hasn't really wrapped around my head yet.
No
But
worries.
yeah,
Fine.
being high agency,
Right.
being high agency isn't one-time thing, right? It's an infinite. It's almost like a lifestyle that you choose. I think.
Okay.
But yeah, I always start with small problems.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Problem.
Do you consider high agency mindset as the first attributes?
No, not really. I mean, I have two more.
Oh, you two more. Okay.
Yeah, I have two more.
Okay, let's get to the second one if you're ready.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, the other two are much more straightforward, and you guys probably have heard about it. Second one is curiosity. So
Yes.
curiosity, it's simply the desire to know, right? You wonder what things are. And yeah, it is basically, to me, curiosity almost complements high agency. And without curiosity, it's difficult to, keep up with your agency, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, let's put it this way. Curiosity. Again, if we go back to your company's experience, when did curiosity comes in, and when did you realize that curiosity is so much more important?
Yeah. Okay. So I can use a similar problem, the same problem that I mentioned for the high agency. So maybe let's continue there.
Okay.
So I mentioned when I started writing out scripts before speaking,
Yeah.
I learned that I sucked at writing, and I was like, uh-oh. And I probably would have just found out. I think if I didn't question, like, why do I suck at speaking? Why am I not speaking the way I want, or why am I speaking the way I think I sound? I think if I didn't start asking those questions, I wouldn't have found out that I am not good at writing either. I would have just, shrugged at the whole ordeal and just turned around to a happy hour or something. But I think instead I was really curious and almost to the like frustrated point. Why am I, my speaking wasn't good, and when I got to the writing, why didn't, even though I spent hours on this and I revised so many times, why isn't my script sounding good? Right? So
Yeah. What did you do?
yeah,
What did you
yeah.
do?
So yeah, so what I did, and this is where I think the agency sort of came out. So I was like, okay, if I don't really sound good with these scripts. So what I used to do was, I think before I just revise. So just read it silently, just like reviewing my script, and then I, fix the grammar or whatever. But I knew it wasn't working out for me because whenever I was speaking in meetings, I wasn't speaking the way I want according to the script. Even the script was written and prepared. So what I did is I realized, okay, maybe I am nervous speaking, right? So I recorded myself reading the script out loud and just like open up this empty Zoom, right? And I just like recorded myself and I corrected bad habits I had, and just got used to being in front of screens. And this is during COVID. So I'm talking about recording Zoom and things like that. Oh yeah, just doing it in front of, you know, the environment that you will be in. So that's what I did. So I recorded myself over and over again. I read the script out loud many times. And when you read it out loud, it sounds so different from what you thought it was going to sound. So the process really painful and of course like embarrassing. My partner was always there and he's like, "What are you doing?"
We said it before. Okay.
Yeah, but like I basically went on until like it was not a concern for my curiosity.
Right. I think this curiosity in conjunction with high agency mindset is very applicable to anything else.
Mm-hmm.
When some of our junior designer friends, they're often asking for, oh, so how do I revise my resume, my portfolio?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes they don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if we have folks here wanted to do it, please take notes on these two important
Yes.
mindset. Divide and conquer. Sometimes it's just hard to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And like, curiosity, I brought these attributes to share today because, excuse me, I truly believe that these attributes can be groomed, right? It could be nurtured. Like it's not something that, oh, I'm not born with it, so I'm not going to just even try. It's not, you can groom it. You can obtain these attributes. So I think one framework to really help you become more curious, and I think you just, for me, I think I used to have lots of ego. Like, oh, I studied so many hours. I spend this many time, doing this. I should, know a bit about this. And I have the right to know. I have the right to say that I know. But I think you need to be really, really honest about what you don't know. And I think you just need to put aside your ego and just admit that you may not know. I think that is really the first step.
Question. I know that you were managers before Shopify's anyways, and as a manager, even way before when you are intermediate designer, do you have that ego when you are in that position?
I can only speak for myself. I think I definitely had ego. Like I definitely had egos in, a deep part of my heart, on certain aspects of design. I always thought that I was like great at interaction design, right? I
Right.
thought that I was amazing at logo design. I always thought that I had this knack, I just had this special like power for colors. I can choose any colors, I can make them work. All wrong, all wrong in retrospective. But I had those, and I think we all go through that. I think
Can you give
phase.
us an example, a real life example, in the working environment? When did you realize that you did something wrong in retrospective?
Yeah, I think it's pretty recent. Maybe
And
like, yeah, maybe like
let's hear it.
3 years ago, 2, 3 years ago. Yes.
What happened?
I think so. I it's very similar. It's similar to the example. I think it was around the same time. When I believed that I was doing a great job as a manager. And that was when I was just, making that transition to management. And I was like, I know what I'm doing. My team loves me. And I can speak about the, product strategy. Now I sit in the room with the leadership team. I felt great about myself. But very soon, I think I realized I don't know so much. And I think at the time I didn't even know what I don't know, which is horrible, right? Which is on the bottom bit of the competency. And I'm just like, and I think at the time I was like really lost. And I think that's when I realized like my ego manifested itself because I was becoming defensive, right? Whenever someone would have a different opinions, or they would just bring a different opinion in the room, and I'll be so defensive about it. I'll be like, what? What are you saying that I'm wrong? No, seriously, like it's very stressful for many people, for myself, for other people, for partners, it's just really bad. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's when probably like that's when I realized, oh yeah, I really do need to let this go, you know. Yeah.
And when curiosity comes in and find out what
You
happened.
know, yeah, you know what? That's a funny thing, right? Like when I had this ego, I was holding onto my ego for life. I was not curious about anything, right? I think I was really stuck with thinking, why are people so mean to me? Right? Why isn't life going the way I want? Life sucks. I think just blaming mode. And I think when I put that ego aside, that's when I really started to feel liberated almost, to start asking questions, right? Like I don't feel defensive. I don't feel like I'm stupid. That's why, I'm asking these questions. But I actually feel like it's okay to ask these questions. And I think maybe it was really difficult for me and it took a long time. But I think it is definitely something that you can make a change in your mindset, like for a quick change, if you work at it.
Yes, yes. Additionally, have you feel any drastic change between you and your team or your leadership team?
Of course, yeah. I think it's very drastic, right? I think everyone felt less afraid to talk to me, right? That is I think one very obvious difference. And like for my team, right? They stopped feeling having to, or having this in almost like implied pressure to defend for me, right? So they also felt liberated. They were like, oh, okay, yeah, now, and also, and that was me doing a horrible job being a leader, right? That I was putting this pressure, that this unspoken pressure on my team to also not being able to ask questions, right? Because they didn't want to offend me, or maybe.
Yeah.
So I think these are the things that really, yeah, a lot of sort of cascading effect.
I I just want to say thank you for your honest
No
sharing,
problem.
and yeah, and at the bottom of my heart, because no one taught me or taught everyone how to become a leader in school. So and sometimes when I am talking to people who is younger than me or in my team, I don't know how to talk to them and make them feel happy, motivated. Some things, yeah, I don't know how to get better. As personally, I don't know how everybody feel. So is there any tips or advice that you can give all the managers or leaders, team leads here? How do we foster a good team relationship so that they are not afraid of you anymore?
Yeah, I think, yeah, maybe the last attribute will be the good one. Like I
Okay.
was going
So,
to talk about open-mindedness. I mean, what it is really the being open-minded is literally just being open to different things and ideas. It just matters of all different kinds, right? And I think to me, if I have to summarize it, it's basically you defaulting to welcoming instead of rejecting. And I think that is so important as a manager or any leader in any industry or discipline, because when you're leading something, when you're leading a group of people, you're leading a group of people with different backgrounds, right? And therefore different opinions, different ways to communicate, right?
Yes.
Different traumas, right? Different,
Yeah.
many different things. You can come up with many, many different things. If you're not open-minded, you are creating unsafe place for your team, where some people, you're basically implicitly discriminating them, right? Some people who you are comfortable with, that you're, comfortable because they have more commonalities with you in communication skills, backgrounds. Then what happens is people who don't have that commonality and share that commonalities with you feel left out. And what happens is you're not leading a group, you're leading individuals. What happens is it just creates this disparity. So when a disparity happens, when you're leading a group of people, that's when all these unnecessary tools need to come in to fix them. Processes, right? Rules, methods, guidelines, checklist, right? So I think being open-minded really sets the right foundation for you as a manager or leader to be an effective leader, I would say, right? By creating a safe place.
How has rules, guidelines, or checklists helped you to become a proper UX manager?
I just want to correct that. I was saying that, you need processes and all those different mechanisms when things are not effective, things are not effective, because you need to you need to basically guide people, right? You need to have ways to guide them. You need to have ways to tell people what not to do and what to do. When your team is really effective, all those things are not necessary, right? People say, in an ideal world, you don't need it. But to be honest, I feel like it's just really a matter of creating that environment and that environment where people can foster like true trust. And I sound like an idealist, but it can happen, right?
Which I'm going to drill it down a little bit more. So,
right. Okay.
Example time. Do you ever, for once in your professional life, had conflicts with your team, and how do you rectify the issue? Then it can turn into the effective team the way you want.
Yeah, I think that was really interesting.
You can
so
take
in my head there's two stories I can choose from, right?
Why don't
Maybe
you tell both?
yeah, I can briefly share two both, and then maybe you can tell me to elaborate on
Sure,
one.
yeah.
So one is when I was much younger, and early in my career, I had worked with this tenured like employee, a coworker at my work, and he and I really didn't jive well. And yeah, so that's one. And second one is more recent. I am more mature, I know what not to do. So like in this scenario, I never lead anything to go into conflict. And in this case, how I would define conflict is conflict where people are like offended, people are insulted, or people feel offended, people feel afraid.
Yeah.
That's what I would how I would define the conflict in this scenario. So I would never lead any conversation to go into conflict with that definition. But what I would say that I do often though is kind of go into this thoughtful disagreement. And thoughtful disagreement is another term that my last mentor also coined for me, and he's just amazing. Basically, it's a concept that you share opinions, you gather opinions from other people, knowing that you don't know everything. So when you're sharing, so when you go into a meeting room, even though you have done all the work, when you go into a room, you acknowledge that there are things that you don't know. And you are inviting these people because you want their help. You're not there to get their approval. You're not there to justify that you're right, or persuade someone that you're right. Or you're going in there with complete candidness that there is something that I am missing here, and you're asking them to help. So that is thoughtful disagreement. So in the letter scenario, conflict isn't something that I would experience a lot, but lots of thoughtful disagreement. Which one should I talk about?
I think I don't know about you guys. You can let me know in the comment section, but I am now leaning more forward to the conflict that you are having with the later experience, because I hate conflict. And I don't know how to handle conflict with people who is more superior than me, or people who I work with, even for people who are working on as a subordinate. I hate conflict. How did you deal with it? Oh, did I mute myself? Can you hear? Someone
Oh, you're fine.
oh,
I cannot unmute. Okay.
yeah, someone wait, don't worry guys.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay, you got it. Cool.
Here, I'm back. So I think I misunderstood your initial question. I thought you wanted me to talk about when I had conflicts. But if I had to talk about how I dealt with conflict, probably wouldn't talk about the first one because I ended up quitting. So that was me being very immature. And yeah, I basically ditched the opportunity to learn. Very stupid of me. But there are many times when I helped my coworkers or my team prevent themselves from going into conflict. Maybe I can talk about that.
Oh yeah.
So what I often see, so in a team environment where we work fast, where we work with other disciplines like PMs and engineering, I think designers often feel they have less voice in leading projects oftentimes, and especially like time constraints. That is often how they feel. And what happens is because they feel stuck, they feel voiceless, it sort of manifests themselves into this sort of defensiveness. So in a lot of like design workshops or design review sessions, I do see designers not really going into meetings to engage in a thoughtful disagreement, but they sort of go in there to move things along. So they want to just make sure that everything's right. So
Yeah.
if there's differing opinions that will add to scope, or that's going to be very different from the approach that you took, then you feel a bit frustrated, right? And that is a recipe for creating conflict, because you become very defensive.
Yeah.
And people can feel it, right? People who participate in your meetings can easily pick up on those.
Yeah.
Only you don't know, which is interesting. So what I always I support my designers who are in that state to always like have some principles in mind that work that they're doing isn't all on themselves. I think a lot of times designers feel like, you know, the success of this project it falls on me, right? And you put a lot of pressure on yourself. But I think you need to, sorry, I think I am a little,
Drifted.
I want to be a bit more specific. Yeah, so I think, yeah, let's talk about this one. So there was, you know, conversation about like MVP, right?
MVP. Okay.
Yeah, if you're in an agile development environment, MVP comes up a lot. And a lot of times MVP comes up when we want to cut scope. And a lot of times we cut scope on quality of user experience. So that created conflict, right? So designers, after meetings where the MVP came up and, you know, huge scope was cut, they would come out of meeting and they would be frustrated. They would start having this like negative narratives about the PMs or the engineers, you know, who pushed for the MVP idea and ended up scoping out the important part of the, you know, user experience that will lead to the end of the, you know, the success of the project. And I think that's when I always sort of engage in the conversation by like just shifting that mindset a little bit. It's not about, you know, it's not about you actually. It's about the project, right? So if this is, you know, if the work that we value a lot was cut from scope, let's not complain about that because it's already done, right? What can we do to make sure that it is revisited, right? And we kind of go into that problem solving like mode. And as soon as we start doing that, you can't do that by yourself. A lot of times designers have to consult PMs, consult engineers to, you know, edit to the GitHub or whatever the test managements that you guys use and communicate with them. And by solving that problem together, that's problem of, okay, how do I revisit this task that was cut scope? They kind of go into being like very defensive about like, you know, why did this happen to me? My work was cut off, you know, they didn't value my work, to a different mindset of like, hey, like, how do I solve this problem? And I need to solve it with A, B, and C, right? So I think the latter case, like already, I think they are in a much better like a mental state, almost like they're happier because they know that, you know, nothing will, words not ending, right? You just have to identify that problem, share that problem with the rest of the team and just solve it, right? So I think that is how I would approach like solving conflict or even preventing conflict, because if it wasn't interfered and let's say that negative narrative just continued on, then what would happen is it would break the trust in the team, like the multidisciplinary team, and it will actually affect the success of the project because people will avoid talking to each other. There will be a lot more opportunity for misalignment, which will then affect the overall product velocity. And yeah, so it has a lot of a negative cascading effect.
I can feel it already. It's like a butterfly effect. I feel like you did a pretty good job on being a therapist to your I think a good manager sometimes is a therapist, a part-time therapist too.
I don't know if any of my team is here, but they'll be like, oh, I don't know.
Okay, now I'm being curious again. So you dealt with conflict about to rise within your team. Then how about you as a manager? Have you how do you dealt with conflict using the 3 attributes? High energy mindset, curiosity, open-mindedness to talk to your peer management colleagues? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So being a manager is very difficult to me because I'm also not very experienced. So as a manager, you manage people, projects in different directions at the same time, which is very difficult. What I mean by that is you're managing up with, upper management team who have many different ideas, opinions, priority, right, perceptions, has different communication styles, right?
Yeah.
So many different things, and then you're managing down, with your with your direct reports, who also have different opinions, right? Different communication, different background, different skill set, different strength, weakness, and then you're also managing across horizontal, which is your like different disciplinary leaders, right? Like PM leads, engineering leads, engineering managers, data scientist lead, user research lead. You name it, right? You can just go crazy, and you're just managing so many opinions, so many different communication style. So conflicts, I wouldn't say conflict, but in order to prevent from going into conflict as I defined it previously, I think you just need to be you need to have that high agency to
Yeah.
be able to observe, right? You have to be constantly observing what's going on around you. And you need to be curious. You need to be curious enough to ask, why is this going this way? Why is this person stuck? Why are they not happy? Why are they burnt out, right? Why isn't this strategy clear to my team? You need to start asking those questions. And once you start asking those questions, that's when you have all the context that you need to do something about it, right? And I think that's when your open-mindedness come in, where like sometimes you have to do things that are not in your preference. And I think that's something that you need to be very open-minded with. You have your own principle, your personal preference for things, but sometimes you need to act differently. You need to do things differently to cater to different needs, to cater to different environment. And I think those three really kind of goes in hand together when you're at a management level, where when your influence of or your scope of influence is just vast in every angle. So I would say like when you're entry level designers, you are like, if you look at it from like a circle, right? Your circle is this small, like you only have to like care about yourself. When you're senior level, your scope of influence is a little bigger, right? So
Yeah.
you have yourself, maybe a few other designers, and you have your trifecta, like your PMs, your engineers, you are influencing them too. When you're management, and also at many different levels, right? It just becomes bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
You just need to be really good at these three in
Yep.
order to keep calm, right? Stay calm, which is very important. Accountability of being a leader. You need to keep calm and stay motivated and just unblock your team. I think that's the difficult part.
Yes, I think so too. And these three key attributes, I can already tell definitely help you from being a junior and grooming all the way to where you are right now. So something that it's on my notes too anyways. As a manager now, you've been through many interviews to hire people, to hire people, and some of the folks here in the community also have trouble hiring people. We have job seekers here. Why don't you share a bit from your perspective? What are you looking for to, do you have tips on hiring people?
Hiring people.
Yeah, how do you find the right candidate?
I think these three attributes are definitely the three that I look for. And surprisingly, and I'll maybe elaborate a little bit more on why I focus on these three. So this is very personal and it's subject to controversy, but I'll say it anyways. It's just personal opinion, okay, guys? I do think that hard skills, such as, learning how to use Figma, learning how to make interaction design, learning how to do UI design, those are a matter of time. You just have to put your head down, study it, But I think there are a few things that actually do require high level of self-awareness and motivation and just like urgency in general to like groom. And I think these are the three, the high agency, being curious and open-minded. And to me, these three attributes are key to successful hiring. I know that is almost like a title and it's very, very strongly worded, but yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to jump in here because as a job seeker, how do I show you that I have the high agency mindset, curiosity, and open-mindedness?
I share some frameworks today, but I think if we're talking about interviews, it can be another session, right? But I'm sure someone else can do a better job. But I think if you really want to stand out to, show these attributes, I think it just shows through how prepared you are for an interview, and what I mean by how prepared you are for the interview is not just creating slideshow that look pretty. That's not what I mean. What I mean by you being prepared is you are considerate of who you're talking to, and who that person is specifically looking for. That's what I mean by being prepared, like being prepared with intention. You're not just being prepared to check off a list. I've created a slideshow with three case studies. That's not what I mean. But you are curating it, right? You're iterating on it. You're writing scripts to talk about it. You are recording yourself over and over again to make yourself sound, sound good. So that's what I mean by prepare. And and I'm talking about this because it's very obvious to interviewer to tell whether you're prepared or not. And it's very interesting. You'll find out when you record yourself how that could be obvious. But yeah, so that's why I think that's really important. And then another thing is like also being curious. Always ask your recruiters or whoever is the hiring manager, whoever is your point of contact, what they're specifically looking for. Don't just look at their job posting. Job posting can be copy and pasted. But it could be on them, but it's you is going to lose the opportunity to learn more about it if you don't ask, right? So always ask, what are you specifically looking for? What are the key things that will make me a successful candidate? They will tell you actually. And if you're talking to recruiters, they will most likely be on your side. They're going to help you in their best effort, and they will give you the answer. And that will get you so much further into the interview, the successful interview.
Right. Is there, I guess, just before we jump into the Q&A section, my very, very last question for tonight would be, is there anything that you would like to ask the candidate to explain or show? Because as a hiring two perspectives. From a hiring manager, we wanted to know within that 30 minutes how much potential that person has. And as a job seeker, within the 30 minutes, how should I stand up myself as you just speak? What question will you ask that particular candidate to show in their portfolio? What what do you like to
Mm,
see the most from their portfolio? Do you mean
right.
pictures?
Right. Yeah. I can speak a little bit about that. I think if we're talking about like portfolio or case study presentation or portfolio review during interview, specifically on that topic, please be outcome driven. And I know I'm using, and what I mean by outcome driven is it's a basically it's a comparison to like, you know, being output driven. You know, people do talk about it a lot, outcome versus output driven. So here's a really good example. So when I look at case studies, there are case studies that talk about process a lot.
Yeah.
Basically, the whole case study presentation is storytelling around process. So here's, you know, a problem. I did talk to X number of users. And then, you know, I went on to wireframing, and then I went on to MidFi, and then I went on to final design, and I went on to, you know, prototyping. And here's what the final looks like, which is great, right? However, especially if you're not entry level, interviewers take for granted that you know or you have your process down already. It's not something that we're looking to know. We want to know what you can bring. We want to know your thought process. And what we mean by that, maybe I'll provide example here too. So instead of telling your case study, focusing on your process, basically structuring your story based on your process, tell the story around you solving problems. So you can say this, here's a problem, and here's why this is a problem. And in order to solve this problem, we had to go through these challenges.
Oh.
And when we looked at these challenges, we actually came up with X number of opportunities that we could actually prioritize. And here's why we prioritized it. And I and few designers went on to quickly prototype what it would look like. And we quickly agreed that this is actually not going to work because, you know, our engineering lead has informed to us that it's going to take too long and we have time constraint.
Right.
So I had to go and brainstorm another solution. And in this case, I actually included that engineering lead to be in brainstorming session to make our conversation more effective and to get us to the shape of solution faster and more efficiently. And you know what I mean? The storytelling is really about problem solving, the process of problem solving, not process, like design process. And say, you know, so we did this, we did that, and we launched it. And here's what we found out. We initially had a hypothesis that, you know, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
After we launched it and we looked at the data, we were wrong or we were right, right? Or we were wrong in some way, we were right in some way. And here's what we're gonna do next step. You know what I mean? Like really tell the story around solving problem, not, you know, you going through the design process. I think that's when I can tell the difference between someone who's really prepared, someone who's not, and someone who really has, you know, the actual experience of working with people who would challenge them a lot versus who would be working in more of a silo, which is not your fault, but you know, if I have to give some examples of like what I will be looking for as good example, that would be
guys, I think this is a very good template for you out there who are looking for a job. It's so much better than the cookie cutter template that we usually see at some other places. Just take note to it. I think this is a great practice, and it's not going to happen a lot. Yeah, only one time for tonight from Yumi. So we have about 14 minutes left. It's my most anticipated part, which is the Q&A section. I've speak too much tonight, and I think I should open up the floor and have some of our volunteers to either speak to pick the question, say it out loud for people, or we can invite that person. So let's look at the list that we jot down the question. What was the first question, guys?
Yeah, sure. There was a question from Hannah Vo. Hannah's left, but I can just read it out.
Please,
So,
yeah, let's go ahead.
So her question was, how do you know things that you don't know?
How do you know things that you don't know? That's a really good question.
Yeah.
That makes me think. How do you know things that you don't know? You know what my answer would be? You don't know. I'm sorry, you don't know. And to be honest, like, how do I know about them? How do I find out what I don't know? I think that's when you try many, many different things to know what you don't know. And sometimes, like I mentioned, like, you don't know how to take the first step to know what you don't know, right? But I think if you stop, I think if you don't continue, like, if you stop asking yourself, like, why isn't this working? How can I get better? How can I improve this? If you stop asking those questions, I think you will never get past that point, or you'll just be slow, which is also fine. But I think if you keep asking those questions, you'll just be naturally looking for ways to answer those questions, right? And I think that's how you get to know what you don't know. And you can only say you didn't know something only when you actually get to know them, right? So in retrospective, right, like, it's going to be easy for you to say, like, oh yeah, that's how you get to know what you don't know. But of course, when you don't, to be honest, right now, like, there's probably a lot of things that I don't know, right? But I think the thing is, like, I think that's the fun part, right? That's the fun part about life, I guess, right? There's just so much that you don't know, and if you keep trying some things, then you'll just get to know more. Sorry for a horrible answer. I don't know if I have better answer than that.
Basically, basically, we need curiosity. We need to be curious about things that we don't know. One of the attributes.
Yeah, and one thing that I would say is also, don't be afraid of not knowing things. I think that's really important. Don't be impatient, right? Like, just embrace that you may not know a lot of things. Just come clean. Just say, hey, I probably don't know a lot of stuff, but I'm curious about this thing. Why don't we start here? And I think that's and I know when you're, just starting the career, it's very difficult to get yourself in that state. And I completely resonate with you. I've been there before. But all I can say is, don't be stressed. Just continue working on small things and just never give up. And I think you'll get there, wherever you want to get to. I really didn't know that I will be where I am, even just 5 years ago or 4 years ago. So I think you just need to continue. I think Joyce has had her hands up.
Yeah. Hi, Joyce. Are you here? If you want to ask questions, you can unmute yourself and turn on your camera too.
All right. Thank you. Maybe I'll pass on the camera. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Yeah. So hi, Yumi. It's been a while. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. And again, like, every time I listen to you talk, I learn so much. And also, I just want to say thank you to the organizers for hosting this event as well. So Daniel already kind of touched on it about curiosity. And my question was kind of how would you recommend how would you recommend a job seeker to showcase their curiosity in their case studies or in their resume?
Good one.
This one I can actually answer. And I think it's pretty easy. Just be very direct on what you are curious about. So for example, during your case study, there could have been an area where maybe things didn't make sense. If you're curious, right? If you're a curious person, then you probably brought one or two questions that influence the direction of the project. Whatever that scope is, maybe it was a design question, maybe it was a project level question, maybe strategy related questions, whatever that is. For example, if you're just entry level designer, maybe you're working on a very specific design problem and you're working on, maybe variation A or variation B. They're very, very similar in terms of impact, but you don't know which one to choose. So if you want to really if you want to show that you're curious in your portfolio, then you can, you have to have the experience of asking why one is better than the other, and perhaps using your high agency to find out what is the difference between variation A and B. Maybe it is technical constraints. Maybe A and B had a very similar impact, right? However, A had 10% more time needed than variation B. And as a project, at the project level, you guys had a very tight time constraint, and that becomes a good, a data to inform your judgment. But variation B is a better one because the impact is also similar. So then you would, you would lead that, that decision making, and that would be a good showcase of you being curious. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, let's go to the next question. Thanks,
Yeah.
Badru.
Next question is from Elham, and asking, how can we present ourselves if our degree is not relevant to UX or computer sciences, and our experience is too specific for getting the interviews?
Yeah, I think this one would definitely be dependent on your employer. I think where you apply. So some companies, I do know they look at degrees, they look at relevant educations. There are organizations that actually do not care. So I know for sure Shopify does not care about degrees or your education. So you could be, coming from, electrical engineering, but you could apply for design. But of course, there is a bar, right? There is a requirement bar, and as long as you can self-teach yourself, you can go to boot camp, or you can just take any means of educating yourself and getting yourself to that bar. Then yeah, like your education isn't relevant.
How do people know where the bar is? If
Often,
they're just coming in the industry, yeah.
Yeah, no, oftentimes you don't know what that bar is. I didn't know what that bar is. And I think we just need to be honest. Like, I know bootcamps bootcamps usually try to tell you what the bar is, how to meet that bar. I really don't think there is an industry standard. Every company has different bars, different things that they're looking for. So I would say just try to be better than where you are now, I think, and just take small steps, right? Just continuously apply, fail, gather feedback from your employer or your interviewer. Gather feedback from your interviewer is a very important one. Very, very important one. Yeah, just continue doing that. Sorry, I don't think there is an industry standard.
I think we have a hand raised.
Hi, feel
Hello.
free to email. Hello.
So
Okay.
this hand raises me.
Yeah. Hi.
Thank you for the great lecture and the answer.
No problem.
But my concern is I have the knowledge and I have that bar. I have the experience to, for example, design and do the research completely from the scratch and deliver the product. But I'm not sure that what's wrong with my presentation that I cannot get the interview.
Are you getting? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I have 2 PhDs. And so regards to the, for example, and all of my experience in my second PhD was just focusing on the UX design and research. So I don't have any concern from that side, but my major concern is just, as I said, I don't know how to present myself and how to present my experience to just get the attention of the reviewer.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. And it is a tricky one. But what I would say is maybe a question for you, just to clarify, Elhan. Are you able to, when you're talking about like not passing the presentation, are you actually talking to the interviewer to present your case study?
No, I mean that, for example, I apply for so many jobs. Some of them are relevant, some of them are not, but I don't get an interview. And it's
okay.
I'm curious that what's wrong with my applications. I know maybe it's out of the scope of this session, but I don't know what's wrong with my applications that I never get an interview. By never, I mean that over the past 2 weeks, I'm a little impatient as well, but
yeah, you're definitely impatient. Maybe this will give you some relief for you. Like, so for example, when I applied, right? Like most job, even if it were referral, I think it took me like a week to like actually talk to a recruiter. When it wasn't a referral, I think it took me, like 2-3 weeks to actually get a hold of someone. And I think one company actually came back to me after 2 months. So I think it really varies. So don't be discouraged. But if you have already, I don't know, like I will really need to, look at your application to see like if there is anything wrong, right? Maybe there isn't. But I think what you can do is to make sure that you are applying for a role that you are the right fit for. Yeah, sometimes they are looking for not just a UX researcher. They are looking for someone who has a little bit more T-shape. So they want you to be able to UI design, right? In addition to UX design. Or maybe they're looking for someone who's entry-level UX researcher, right? Who's a little bit less experienced. And it comes from many different reasons, budget, right? And also sorts of stuff. Those are things that are really not in your control, but those are usually explicitly laid out in job posting, or even if you ask your recruiter, they'll tell you. So yeah, maybe those are the things that you can check to make sure that you are getting through that first door. But I would say, give it another couple of weeks. But if you still don't get any response, then yeah, you can message me on LinkedIn. I can take a look. Yeah,